last week.
I watch it later.
The playback.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like doing it.
Hi, everybody. Hello, hello. Happy Erev Purim to everyone. Wait, don't worry. You're not even close on. You're not even close.
I feel like I do not.
Everyone in my local proximity is backing away because they don't want to be on screen. For those of you who fasted today, I hope it was easy and a fast. And we are going to start off with a review from last week. We're going to do a very quick 2-minute review, get everybody up to speed, and also so we can clear the cobwebs from our discussion last week. And then we're going to move into the deeper level for this week. So the nutshell topic is how to transform your triggers into tranquility. And we're looking at how to stop living in a place of blame where we feel like we are constantly, not necessarily maliciously blaming the people, the circumstances, the world around us, but we definitely get into a pattern, and it's a very toxic pattern, a very defeating pattern, where we continuously give away our power, and we feel like we are in the passenger seat of our own life. So that's what we're working around. Do you mind to shut the door when you come back through? Just so you can help us with the sound? Thank you. So what we want to do is we want to figure out how to become aware of what those patterns are so that we can take back our power and so that we don't have to live on an emotional roller coaster of life with whatever comes our way. And the best analogy that I know to use for that is that so many of us go through our entire life feeling like the inside of a pinball machine. And we're just whacked here and whacked there and whatever happens, and we're just kind of along for the ride, not feeling in control or feeling empowered in our own situation. So what we talked about last week, we spent a big chunk of the conversation defining triggers and identifying and thinking through what are the different things that trigger us, or most of us. We all have our own different triggers. We even laughed about the fact that the word trigger itself is a new word. It's not a word that we used a decade ago.
There's only one you didn't mention.
Which one?
When you trigger yourself.
Ah, yeah. Okay, so how do you do that?
Look at something that triggers you and like look at someone's social media from your past and you're like, oh, let me trigger myself here and then do that. And then that's also addictive. And so it's not necessarily triggering from the exterior in, but you doing it to yourself, which is the worst.
That's right. And that's completely living out of our rearview mirror, right? Like sitting here going, oh, and we over glorify the good old days.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? When all we wanted to do then was get the heck out of them. Or we live in the coulda, shoulda, woulda as we're comparing ourselves to other people. And the super dangerous thing about comparing, and I'm so glad you brought this up, the super dangerous thing about comparing is that whenever we compare, we constantly compare our weaknesses to someone else's strengths. And when we do that, we never measure up. And we're never actually looking at apples to apples. And of course, it's like comparing apples to elephants. Like there's no comparison whatsoever. But once we identify all of these triggers, and then we stop, and we had a homework assignment this week for those of you that practiced along with us, or you even took a few minutes to think about it. So the homework assignment was to go trigger hunting. So to look through our daily life or a week at a glance and look at what are my own trigger patterns? What are the biggest things that trigger me? Where are the parts of my day where I get triggered? And it's interesting that, now I'm overly generalizing here, but a lot of times we will be triggered at the same parts of a day. So we'll start off our day at a certain way and everything goes pretty well. And then there's usually something that happens at a certain part of day and we're like, again, every time. And we just become a self-fulfilling prophecy because we are creating that reality again and again and again. And then what do? Those addictive chemicals kick in and we're off to the races and we ride that wave all over again. And the crazy thing that if we could ever if we would choose to get off of that roller coaster and say, no, I'm not going on that ride today, and we step out of that emotional pattern and we stop and we just we talked about last week this term called the observer effect, which means we've zoomed out, we're looking from a neutral place, like a 30,000 foot view. We're not defensive, we're not emotionally attached to the situation, and we're just observing, as if I'm looking at someone else's life. And when we can stop and do that, then we can see a lot of things that we're like, why do I do that? That is so dumb. I'm definitely not going to do that again. And if we were talking to a friend of ours, we'd be like, you really have to stop doing that. I can't believe you're destroying yourself this way, or, whatever. And we can see it when we're not in that pattern. We're not in the cycle. So why is it that we get stuck into those cycles again and again and again? And this is a piece of actual neurochemistry that's happening in our bodies. I don't know why we are not required to learn this in the 2nd grade, and then learn it at a whole new level again in the 6th grade, and learn it at a whole new higher level in the 10th grade, and then required to learn it in college, and then required for sure to learn it as a premarital course, and then required to learn it again as a new parent. Because if we had to learn this one skill and this one topic at all those different levels, we would probably be operating at about 1,000 times higher than where we're operating right now. And the fact that the overwhelming majority of the human race goes through their entire lifetime without ever learning this topic is just mind-blowing to me. Once I started to really understand the power that I was missing out on from sheer stupidity of not realizing that I'm an addict in a cycle, in a pattern, and how I was angry. Like, why did I not know this? How did I get to be this many before I understood these things? And I was really, really, really blown away from it. And I feel like if there's anything that we could do to make sure that we have more awareness around this, it would allow us to step into our own greatness, our own purpose and power so much stronger. So what am I talking about? Understanding the neurochemical, scientific situations that are happening in our brains and bodies every time we get triggered, and the cause and effect that happens there, and how we can just simply choose, boop, a different story. Okay, so let's take it from the top. So thoughts are electricity. Emotions are chemistry. And so my dad, he had his 1 month checkup today. I haven't even had a chance to call him yet, so we're waiting to get the cancer-free message. Amen. So as soon as we're done, I'll call him back. Okay. Thoughts are electricity. Emotions are chemistry. So when we think a thought, by modern day science and technology, those thoughts can actually be tracked. They can be tracked, and you can see the neural synapses and the connections in the brain and how it lights up our brain matter and how different things happen in our body as a result of those thoughts and those neurons firing. Okay? Emotions, on the other hand, are chemistry. It's a chemical reaction. So whatever emotion, whether it's happy, sad, anger, frustration, love, joy, fear, anger, those create a corresponding chemical reaction in our body. And it is literally like pressing a button and watching the show. Pressing the button, watching the lights go off. And this is how guaranteed it is happening in our system over and over and over again, every single day, our entire life. That's how predictable we are. And because of these triggers and because of these patterns, okay, Haya gets triggered and gets angry by a stupid person. Haya thinks this. Haya acts in this way. Or, there's somebody, their bank account is overdrawn and they go into fear, scarcity. Or somebody gets a hate message or a critical email. They go into defense mode. They start defending themselves. They start inflating whatever is the situation. Or the husband does this and the wife does this, and it's these same patterns, but why? The reason is because when that adrenaline or that dopamine gets set off in our brain, it creates this very set pattern in our body that we over time become addicted to. So we are literally addicted to these highs and lows of this chemical reaction that's happening in our body, just like a person gets addicted to nicotine. So without understanding what's happening, we actually go in pursuit of being triggered throughout the day
To get that.
so that we can ride this roller coaster because we think it's too boring without it.
But sometimes
We never want it consciously. It's a subconscious desire that we have to feel that charge, because we don't know how to have a joy state without that charge. Because it's boring. Yeah, we think it's boring. Okay? Or we think, I'm missing something. And why is that? Because human nature, we are always in search of a higher connection. We don't know that's what's happening, but we're in search of our elevated state. And because our physical body and our human nature doesn't know how to connect with our elevated highest self or God or the divine or whatever you want to call it, we don't know how to do that on our own, or so we think. So we spend our entire lives out looking for cheap substitutes. There's my son. Everyone's calling to say hi. So we spend, I don't know why they're all calling me tonight. Nobody ever calls me on Thursday night, but maybe I need to turn my ringer off next time. Turn my cell service off. Anywho, so that's what's happening with the chemical reaction that's happening in our bodies. Now, what is happening behind the scenes that's causing that emotion? Short, simple formula, which is E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. Okay? So we have these habitual response mechanisms or response patterns to any number of events that happen in our life, right? Because we can categorize these events into different boxes, and then based on whatever these events are, we have these deep-rooted responses that it's almost like autopilot, okay? And those happen, we literally, at that moment, we kick back into our lower brain. Like we immediately go into our animal state of fight, flight, or freeze. And then our body puts on a show. And our conscious brain, literally, we are like drunk in the backseat. We are not there. Nobody's home. Nobody to talk to. And then our lower self, our animal state takes over. Why? Because I'm in defense mode. I'm defending my ego. I am making sure it is a very, very archaic self-preservation mechanism that kicks in because it makes me feel that I am alive. I'm in control. I have something to say or influence or impact. And anytime my ego flares up, again, if I get angry, if I get hurt, if I get scared, any of those negative emotions, fighting to exist, fighting to stay alive and stay in the picture. But what we don't realize, of course, consciously, is that our ego is our lowest self. Mm-hmm. So when I get kicked into my animal brain back here, and I go into fight, flight, or freeze, again, I'm drunk in the backseat. My conscious brain, my highest self, is drunk in the backseat. There's nobody to talk to, okay? And it usually takes hours, if not a couple of days, for us to calm down enough and have perspective and to have enough of a detox of that chemical reaction in our body for us to look back and go, what the heck was I doing? And why did I do that? That was so stupid. Why did I do that? And because we're in like this, we're on a bender of our emotional pattern that we are addicted to. Make sense? Okay, so that's E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. And this is guaranteed. It's like playing a piano. That's how lamely predictable we are. Okay? Now, around that response, I want to talk to you about this concept of stories. Okay? So, from early childhood, we start to experience situations that write a whole book of stories. And it's like our Rolodex that whenever we get kicked into our animal state, boom, our lowest self, our subconscious goes and picks really quickly from this book of stories that we have, and it's like, boom, which one? It's like almost like on a jukebox. I'm going to play that one. I'm going to play that one. That one from my past. Oh, I love that song. Oh, I love that emotion. Oh, I love that trigger. Oh, I love that pity party. Oh, I love that sob story that I tell myself, or that, pity party, powwow, whatever it is. So the thing is that those stories that we tell ourselves happen so quickly, we don't even realize they're happening. They are literally lightning
Automated.
fast. Yeah. Okay, so how does this happen? So I believe it's William Shakespeare who says, nothing in itself is good or bad. Thinking makes it so. Mm-hmm. So we assign an opinion, or we assign a perspective, or we assign an emotion to something based on our perspective of it, and then it moves out of neutral state into good or bad. Okay? So if I, for example, let's say I walk into a room, okay? I see a girl that I know, maybe it's a colleague. Right as I walk in, I think she looks at me and she rolls her eyes. Why did she roll her eyes at me? What did I do? She's so sarcastic and rude. Why is she judging me again? She doesn't know anything about me. What is she, and I go, oh, you know what? It's probably from last week. Because we had this conversation last week and she got it. And I mean, in a matter of 10 seconds, I've written a whole book of drama of why I think this person rolled her eyes at me. Okay? Could be she has her earbuds in and she's rolling her eyes at her kid on the phone. Could be she didn't even see me walk in the room because she was already telling drama in her head about something else. Could be, I mean, and this is why if you have 10 different people experience the same situation, you will have 10 different stories told because they each have their own backstory to what's going on. So typically what happens is you hear and see something, okay? And that's just factual data. I hear something or I see something. And then their next piece of it comes the emotion, okay? That's usually what people think. I hear something and I got triggered. But there's that split second in the middle where I pull out a story of my Rolodex, I assign a story to this situation, and based on that story that I choose to tell, based on my own personal story time, then the relevant emotion comes in, and based on that emotion, then I form a thought on how I'm going to react, and then I take action. Okay? So it goes, I hear or see something, I tell myself a story, the emotion follows the story, the thought follows the emotion, and then the action comes at the very end. And all of these things happen like faster than you can switch on a light. Everybody, can you recognize this in yourself?
Yeah, I know the stories.
When we're seeing it, right?
Yeah, I know the stories. It's the same ones.
We know the stories, yes. Over and over and over and over, right? Now, are they serving us, these stories? Heck no! Definitely not. Okay? But it's just like, a terrible old boyfriend, also not serving us. Well, we keep going back, okay? Or an abusive spouse, a person keeps going back. It is a terrible option, but it's the option we know. And it's our comfort zone. And comfort zones are just that. Now, most people are not thrilled in their comfort zone. They're not living their best life in their comfort zone, but it's what we know. And because we're creatures of habit, that is what we gravitate back toward. And also because we are constantly aiming to live in the path of least resistance, any moment that we hit resistance, when we try to step out of our comfort zone, we we tuck tail and run, and we go back into our comfort zone, and we lick our wounds.
We justify ourselves.
We absolutely justify ourselves. That's what it is. Okay? And justifying, if you remember, is one of the 3 main symptoms of victim's mentality. Mm-hmm. Okay? The 3 main symptoms of victim's mentality. First one is blaming. Blaming the weather, blaming your parents, blaming your spouse, blaming your kids, blaming God, blaming the government, whatever. Okay? The second one is complaining. And the third one is justifying. And what is justifying? It's just an excuse for staying where we are or in whatever that situation is. Okay? So, if we take all this into consideration and then we go back to square one, which is transforming the traumas and the triggers into tranquility, what do we have to do in order to be able to make this happen? To learn to rewrite the stories. So the interesting and amazing thing is we can reject those stories any time we want. And we can choose to write a different ending, to write a different story. And if I choose to rewrite my stories, I'm literally rewriting the generational legacy that I am passing on to my children and to my grandchildren. Because one of the things that is not commonly known is that emotions and response patterns are inherited from our ancestors, from a lifetime of neurochemical programming, just as much as an ingrown toenail is inherited. And especially if in utero, our mother, we blame everything on our mother, okay? It's the easiest thing to do. Especially if she was pregnant with us, when she was going through these emotional patterns, and so you were literally experiencing the emotional roller coaster that she was going through when she was pregnant with you. You were literally born with that in your blood. Okay? And our parents did the best that they could with the tools they had, and they were given the parent, those emotional response mechanisms from their parents and their parents, and the line goes all the way back. So there's nothing to be resentful for. There's nothing to blame for. It's the way that God created the world. It's the way that God wrote the whole story. So where we are able to take back our power is when we realize that what happens to us is only 10% of the equation. How we respond is the other 90%. And that 10%, it's like the workout program of our entire life. It's like the treadmill and gym of our character. And that's the piece that God literally crafted for our life so that we can be on a certain journey to experience the things that we need to experience so that we become stronger, better, wiser. And it develops in us the muscles, emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical muscles, the awareness, the wisdom, and the experiences that we need into our purpose. Because it's that journey that prepares us for our purpose. Because until we start that journey and we're working off all of the kinks, working off the rough edges, if you will, it's that challenge of life that works through those for us. And again, one of the biggest viruses of society is that we think life was meant to be easy. And so we spend our whole life thinking, oh, I'm just going to wait for this to calm down. Oh, I'm just going to wait for such and such, or if only. And we become mad, angry, stressed, resentful, not realizing that those challenges are the whole point of life. And again, whether we experience those challenges from negativity bias or positivity bias is based on the stories we tell ourselves and the perspective. So the best way that I have learned to really kind of flip that switch and like play a game in my mind is to imagine, like, because it's actually true, we live in a reality show. Okay, so if you think of like Big Brother, you know, like one of those old school, you know, reality shows, or, you know, Housewives of whatever, and you realize that the whole world is watching your responses and your reaction to the situations that are around you. And the truth is that we always know that someone above is watching us, the one person that actually matters, you know, when Judgment Day comes. And that is, and of course our children and our family. And if we can just step out of ourselves just enough and just create a little bit of daylight, like a little bit of distance, and not be so emotionally attached, hook, line, and sinker to all the drama that's happening. So instead of, again, being the inside of that pinball machine, if we have just enough distance between us and what's happening so that we can just have a little bit of daylight and a little bit of wisdom, then we're able to create just a little hairline space between you and the emotional attachment to everything that's happening in your life. And then that gives you that perspective to say, okay, everything that happens to me today, thank you God, thank you God, thank you God, this is perfect, this is amazing, everything is happening for my highest good and the greatest good of all day, every moment. And when we start rehearsing that thought, instead of, why again? It's too much. I can't believe this is happening. And whatever is that story that we tell ourselves. But instead we start saying, thank you, 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 thank you. There's actually a verse in Psalms that says, basically, and I'm totally paraphrasing here, but basically, however we behave, God is our shadow, right? So if we are acting ungrateful and like a spoiled brat, and I'm having an adult temper tantrum, and why, and just cranky and ungrateful and entitled for whatever's happening, then I am creating the energy of whatever is coming back to me, because God is my shadow. And so whatever I'm serving up to him, he's just giving more of back to me. So if I want to change my reality, if I want to change my results, if I want to change my situation, then the very best thing that I can do is change how I am acting in any given moment. Because the moment we become aware, you know, like in Chinese medicine or in a lot of the Eastern ancient spirituality cultures, you know, they talk about aura. Okay, you have this energy field, and you can see it, you know, with certain cameras and certain light, you can see the aura. But if we can even just realize that this is not a joke, this is not a fiction, this is not a video game, this is actual reality. And this energy that we are putting out into the world is creating our reality every single day. So this, one of the, like the biggest secret superpowers that we can evoke in our own life is just to start telling ourselves different stories.
But sometimes when you do that, it in the beginning, maybe it takes practice. It's like you're lying to yourself.
Yeah, totally feel like you're lying to yourself. Like, this is fake. Why am I doing this?
Like it's fake.
And it feels disingenuous.
Right.
And you feel like it's a joke. And it's like, it feels very detached. Like, this is ridiculous. I can't even believe I'm doing this. And that's where fake it till you make it comes in. Because it's not about being fake, which is how we feel. But it's about changing intentionally, changing the narrative and becoming a different person on the inside and then projecting that new reality to the outside world. Because how did all of these stories become a part of our identity? Because we told them to ourselves 90 million times.
But how do you change it? Like, let's say I have a circumstance, it's like, okay, and then I always tell myself, well, the time that mine did this, I hear it all the time, it's the same thing. And I'm like, okay, so that's why. So what do I say? Like, how do I change the story?
So I would actually get a pen and a notebook and write a new ending. And when you are struggling, read your new ending. And you're gonna feel so weird. It feels so weird. Foreign.
Right.
Okay, but if you understand the power of what you're doing, in fact, that exercise is called taking back your pen. Why is it called that? Because you are rewriting your own self-worth, and you are rewriting your own destiny. Because we've given our pen to everybody else in the whole world around us, and so if you like me, I don't feel good about myself. If I read a yucky email, if I read a nasty comment on Facebook, then my feeling of value and intrinsic worth goes up and down with all of those things, because I'm giving away my pen, I'm giving away my power to everybody around me, and I'm listening to your story, and I'm taking your story, and I'm writing all my own story on top of it. So as unnatural and awkward as it feels, it's just like, for example, if you start brushing your teeth with the opposite hand, it feels weird. You can't try to write your name, forget it.
So wait, can I just do an example?
Yes.
Okay, so let's say you walk in, the girl makes eyes at you, and then your story is like, in the normal story is like, I know she doesn't like me because so-and-so said something about me. So now I'm going to look at that girl and I'm going to say, she loves me. She just, she's just having a hard, like, what do you do? Like, just change the, like, I don't know how to do it.
So there's a few things you can do. Okay, in that particular example, there's a few things you can do. Okay? One example is you can tell yourself nonsense, and that's just living in denial. If you know there's an issue with the person, and I'm just
I'm just saying, because you have it about people in general.
Yeah, but if if there's word on the street, somebody's got beef or whatever, and somebody's being dramatic or whatever, so you can do a few things. So I forget who said this. One of our founding fathers said, I don't like that person, I must get to know them better. Okay? Which means that if I can get to common ground, if I can build a relationship with someone, then I can work through whatever those conflicts are. Or if it's just that we probably got off on the wrong foot and she doesn't know anything about me and I don't know anything about her, and probably people just, the telephone game, somebody went blah, 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 then I can say two things. I can either give her positive intent and I can assume good things about her, or I can not care. And I can say what other people think about me is none of my business. So what? I don't give two hoots. And either one of those, as long as you can own the actual feeling, are fine. They'll work. But that's what I'm saying. There are any number of stories that you can write for yourself as a new ending for that situation. Pick one and run with it.
Well, also, if you change the story, you make the situation kind of irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. You're right. And also, if you change the story, you make it irrelevant. And also, if you change the fact that you care. Like, if I'm not attached to the outcome, who cares?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Because in a year from now, is that thing going to matter?
It's irrelevant. And most things are.
Not. Yeah.
How do you act when you don't care, when you actually care?
So then you get to the point of why you care. And it's usually somewhere in there, your story is woven into your self-worth being given away and your power being given away because you don't have enough value, the direct definition of your value between you and your creator, because you were getting your value in false places. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay, so let's wrap up here. So we can see this, like, it's like a runaway train, right? And we can see it happening in ourselves. We can certainly see it in other people, but we can also see it in ourselves. And it's happening here, there, and everywhere. So the exercise is to identify the triggers. And typically when we become triggered, we don't see it in the moment. It takes a little while later until that whole chemical reaction happens, and then we have to wait for all those chemicals to work through the blood and blah, 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 blah. But you will see it eventually, right? And the more we practice just looking, That's why I said you're going trigger shopping or trigger hunting. Not that you want to pick up new triggers, but you just want to find where yours are. Okay? And then we start becoming aware of what these stories are that we tell. And then the most powerful part is rewriting those stories. This is not something that a person does in passing. This is something that you must be willing to invest time in. Literally with a notebook, a journal, a pen, and rewriting all of those toxic stories that are creating an invisible, self-imposed prison for us. And it's keeping us stuck in Smallville, because it is absolutely impossible to step into our greatness, into our true purpose, into our highest self when we are stuck telling ourselves these stupid lies and these false realities that are keeping us literally at maybe 1/10 of the power that we're meant to be living in. Okay? So if you truly care about this and you truly want to rewrite that destiny, find the time to work on rewriting your stories. Find the triggers. Find what that runaway train looks like. Find what are, and you have to stop and think, what stories am I telling myself? It happens in a lightning speed. What is that story? How am I going to rewrite that story? And look at, we even, because of these triggers, we develop certain addictive behavior patterns with people we care about the most. And how do you know this is true? Because you haven't seen a loved one in a year or 2 or 3, and what do? You pick up right where you left off with that same belief pattern and behavior pattern. Okay? So we do it with the people around us, we do it within ourselves, and in order to break out of that pattern and to rise above mediocrity, it takes work. It's not an overnight quick fix. It's not a microwave mentality. But we have to be willing to play the long game and be willing to invest in ourselves and our relationships and the people that we love the most if we truly want to step into the next level of living that is filled with so much joy and so much meaning and so much fulfillment that we got to be willing to do the work. And just like any workout plan, just like anything worth having is worth working for.
Have you seen it work when you change?
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
You can also work on them one at a time.
Yes, they don't have to be.
That's what I'm going to do.
It would be overwhelming to try to do them all at once.
One.
Absolutely, pick one. Pick one. Just like in any of your life. If I say, okay, I need to get out of $100,000 in debt. I need to lose 40 pounds. I need to work on my marriage. I need to fix, the trouble with my mother, and I have to start a new business. All at once, it's not going to happen. Okay? And again, one of my very favorite quotes, actually my only quote that I really ever was able to really resonate with from Tony Robbins, he says, most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a lifetime. So if we just take it one step at a time, then that's where the momentum takes off and then the synergy builds. Yeah? Any questions?
How long does it take?
A lifetime. A lifetime. Because there's always new levels. New levels. Yeah. Something new. Every time. Yeah. But that's where it gets fun too. And once we really, it's not a lifetime of super toxic, limiting beliefs we have to overcome, okay? But because once we overcome the ones that are really damaging us the most, it's like the 80-20 rule. We have a few that are really holding us back. Yeah. Tackle those first, and then you start to fly. And then it's just a matter of how high can I go? How fun can it get? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Amazing. Okay. Bye, everybody.